The city of Seattle, Washington, was always wrapped in misty mornings, the smell of rain-soaked pine, and the quiet hum of coffee shops that dotted every corner. For Emily Carter, Seattle was more than just her home. It was the place where she had built a new chapter of her life. At 24, Emily was gentle, thoughtful, and full of dreams that often carried her into sketchbooks. She worked part-time at a small bookstore near Pike Place Market, its windows lined with fairy lights and stacks of novels that felt like old friends. The store was quiet most days, except for tourists, but Emily didn't mind. She loved the silence, the smell of paper, and the chance to lose herself in her art during slow hours. Life had been steady but lonely until she met Daniel Carter. Daniel was 26, a kind man with steady eyes and a warmth that made people trust him almost instantly. He was an architect who had moved from Chicago to Seattle for work. Their worlds collided on a rainy evening when Emily's umbrella broke and Daniel offered to walk her home. What began as small talk over puddles turned into coffee dates, long walks near the waterfront, and eventually a love story that blossomed quietly but deeply. A year later, they were married. Their apartment wasn't large, but it carried the soul of their shared life. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee every morning, the walls were decorated with Emily's sketches, and the living room always had Daniel's blueprints scattered on the table. Emily often found herself watching him as he worked, his brow furrowed, his pencil moving quickly, his passion for design so clear. She admired how he cared not only about buildings but about the people who would one day walk inside them. And Daniel, in turn, admired Emily's quiet strength. She wasn't loud or demanding, but her heart was steady, and her way of seeing the world inspired him. But marriage wasn't always easy. Daniel's job was demanding. Deadlines stretched late into the night, and sometimes Emily felt like she was second to his work. She tried to be understanding, but the silence of the apartment sometimes weighed on her. One evening, as rain tapped against their window, Emily sat curled up on the couch with a sketchbook in her lap. Daniel walked in late again, shoulders heavy, tie loosened. "You didn't eat dinner," she said softly. "I grabbed something on the way," he replied, barely meeting her eyes as he placed his bag on the chair. The distance between them was something Emily hadn't expected. She closed her sketchbook and stood. "Daniel, do you even notice me anymore?" Her voice cracked slightly, surprising even herself. Daniel froze, guilt flooding his face. He hadn't realized how much his absence had affected her. Walking closer, he placed his hands gently on her shoulders. "Emily, I notice you. I notice everything about you. I've just been so caught up in work, and I'm sorry if I made you feel invisible." Her eyes glistened, but before words could escape, Daniel leaned forward and kissed her gently, soft, reassuring, filled with love he had forgotten to show. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a promise. After that night, Daniel tried harder. He left work earlier when he could, helped Emily in the bookstore on weekends, and even joined her sketching sessions in the park. One Saturday morning, they went to Green Lake Park. Emily carried her sketchbook, and Daniel brought a thermos of hot chocolate. They sat by the water, the sound of ducks in the background, and Emily began to sketch the view. "You make everything look more beautiful than it already is," Daniel said, watching her pencil move across the page. Emily laughed softly. "That's because I draw how I feel, not just what I see." Daniel reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "And how do you feel right now?" She blushed but met his gaze. "Grateful." He kissed her again, under the open sky, and the world seemed to pause just for them. But love stories often have moments of trial. One rainy evening, Daniel received a call that shook their small world. His company wanted him back in Chicago for a major project, one that could make his career. It meant leaving Seattle for at least a year. Emily felt her chest tighten. Seattle was her home, her bookstore, her quiet life. But Chicago was his dream. "I don't want to leave you," Daniel whispered one night, holding her hand tightly. "And I don't want to be the reason you give up your dream," Emily replied, tears slipping down her cheeks. The decision wasn't easy. But instead of choosing apart, they chose together. Emily agreed to move with him, promising that home wasn't about a city, it was about the two of them. Chicago was louder, busier, and colder than Seattle. Emily missed the misty mornings and her little bookstore, but she found new corners of the city to love. She spent afternoons sketching by the Chicago River, sipping coffee in crowded cafes, and sending letters to her old bookstore friends. Daniel worked long hours, but he always returned home with stories to share. Sometimes they would walk hand in hand along Navy Pier, the city lights reflecting in the water, and Emily would remind herself that love was worth the sacrifices. Months later, Daniel faced another challenge. His project nearly collapsed due to financial setbacks. The stress consumed him, and one evening, he sat in their apartment with his head in his hands. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted. Emily knelt beside him, resting her hand on his. "Daniel, you've built your whole life on believing in possibilities. Don't stop now. And remember, you're not doing this alone." Her words steadied him, and when she leaned in to kiss him, it felt like an anchor grounding him in the storm. Time passed, and slowly, their efforts paid off. Daniel's project succeeded, and Emily found work teaching art classes to children at a local community center. She loved the laughter of the kids, the mess of paint, and the way art connected them. Their love deepened, not because everything was perfect, but because they faced every imperfection together. On their second anniversary, Daniel surprised Emily by taking her back to Seattle for a short trip. They walked past her old bookstore, now under new ownership, and stopped at the very corner where their love story had first begun, under the rain, with a broken umbrella. Daniel pulled her close, smiling softly. "If I could go back to that night, I'd do it all over again." Emily leaned against him, her heart full. "Me too." As the rain began to fall, Daniel kissed her once more, just as he had the first time, but deeper now, richer with the weight of everything they had endured. And in that moment, Emily knew love wasn't about the grand gestures or perfect days. It was about the quiet promises, the struggles faced together, and the kiss that always brought her